Hello and welcome back to the podcast. We are here again to talk about another interesting topic. But before we get into all of that, how are you doing, Sam?
I'm good. I am glad to be back in the hot seat speaking with you about all things renewables because we've had holidays and we've got a lot of shows coming up, and yeah, it's all good. We're when this goes out, it depends when this goes out, but we're going to install a show, aren't we, which I'm really looking forward to. It's going to be the first event, I suppose, that we've been there with our own stand, talking to people and inviting people to talk to us and others as well. So yeah, looking forward to that, and that's probably happened by the time this has come out. But yeah, really looking forward to that and getting in front of people. But yeah, all good in the world of renewables. My side. What about yourself?
Really good, mate. It's still same old of sunny weather and summertime, isn't it? I think I'm told it's the busy time for solar installers, so we're certainly seeing that. And there's some interesting conversations that we've kind of had brewing around that we're going to get into in this conversation, and it ties in with some of your recent adventures over to Intersolar as well. I wasn't lucky enough to get over there, so we can maybe hear a bit about that as well. Again, before we get into it, just to say thank you to everyone who is subscribing,
Yeah, thank you.
following along over on Spotify and on YouTube, clearing 1,000 in each place now, which just a year in is pretty good going, I would say, in a niche area of industry, and just having a bit of fun talking to each other. We do really, really appreciate it. If you've got anything to say alongside these chats, drop them in the comments because we love that as well. But this topic today, Sam, was sort of your idea. So what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. So again, I've had this role before, but I don't know if to give you this role or not. Before I've tried to bring us back onto a positive note, because this is going to be a little bit of a cathartic exercise. I thought that we could maybe talk to each other about some of the topsy-turvy world of being in the solar game and in the renewables game. And so we're going to talk about world events that might affect what we can do as installers, or what customers want from us as installers in terms of product, potential future hiccups that are coming down the track potentially, and yeah, and maybe governing bodies and people like that doing us dirty as well. So yeah, there's a lot to go through, but we'll try and bring it back always to a bit of a positive note, hopefully. But first of all, we've got to put a bit of a punch in now and again when we feel like it's right. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think starting off in that aim, and will lead to more positive times, is a good place to go first. So I suppose, I think we talked, with the time this comes out, it'll probably be 4 or 5 weeks before it, about some world events and around the tariffs and stuff that Donald Trump was doing, and some views and feelings around Elon Musk and his political ideologies affecting some of the things we've seen. And that subsequently changed. A lot of those tariffs were rolled back. Although I think I saw something today about them putting 50% on iPhones or something and falling out with the EU again. So
Best not to look in it.
Yeah, it does change rapidly. But this is a bit more than that. It's like looking more at how the industry moves so quickly, I think. Is that kind of what you're looking towards?
It is. It's the industry moving quickly, but also the effect that world events can have on products that we offer as an end user, that we might have put hard-earned cash into storing. And one thing that I was thinking about today was how much a personal brand can affect your company brand. Because I think it's fair to say that both of our companies and this podcast, I suppose, is based on our individual personal brands, if it doesn't make you feel sick even saying that. But we are, in your videos, in my videos, it's us on the screen representing the company. And so if we do something crazy like go up on stage with a chainsaw or something like that, for example, then it might negatively affect on our company. And obviously with the whole Elon Musk thing and everything, it has directly affected, and this is not groundbreaking. Everyone kind of that watches any sort of news knows how much of an impact that's had on Tesla. But the impact it's had has meant that we've gone from a lot of people, like they were everywhere. The Powerwall 3s were everywhere, and the product is top quality. Like that Powerwall 3 is up there with one of the best battery systems out there at the minute for its energy density, the flexibility of the inverter, the app, the whole home backup, all this sort of stuff. Just really good product. But the impact that one individual can have in a different country on the other side of the world can have on what we fit up here in York is crazy. And so for us, I think we've got about 6 out there, and all we get when we price them to people at the minute is, no, I'd rather stay away from Tesla. And I've got my own views on it all, and I won't go massively into all of that. But it's the impact that one individual who goes home on a night, does whatever he does, and tweets or whatever it is, X's, if that's even the new thing. That how much of an effect that can have on that company, that it will be full of people that love their job, that love fitting a product, love selling a product. And I'm thinking about people within Tesla in the UK and across the world that maybe don't agree with what Elon's saying, or might strongly agree, but are having to kind of represent that brand, and they're maybe seeing an impact of that one individual, and they're working like a dog to try and keep everything spinning. And I do feel sorry for them. And it's just crazy how much of an effect that one or that series of events can really affect what we fit and what we're getting asked for, and also puts us in a bit of a head scratching situation of what do we do with thousands and thousands of pounds worth of product that now nobody wants. But it's a new product.
It's hard, isn't it, when you're stuck with it and you want to fit it, but you can't, and you can't then return it either to your wholesale network. And it's one of those that Tesla are what they are because of Elon Musk. He built that brand through his personal branding to begin with. He hustled and winged it to a large degree, probably begging and borrowing money to get that off the ground and become a manufacturer of vehicles and rockets and all the rest of this stuff. The guy's a maverick. But some of the things he's been doing around politics, and whenever you get involved with politics, it always happens. It's like sports teams as well, isn't it? If you support that team, you'll love them. If you support their rival, you'll hate them. And that's just what's happened, isn't it, around all of this political stuff, that it's become Marmite all of a sudden, and people are going to the nth degree of not wanting anything to do with that guy's stuff. They don't want to put money. They see it as putting money into his hands, I think, is ultimately what they think they're doing. But if you look at it reasonably, you'd probably find something wrong with the owner of every single business if you did in-depth analysis. And I had a comment on one of my videos the other week that really got me thinking, because they were like, those panels that you're using, they've had forced labour involved in the production of their panels in the past, and linked some YouTube video which was like self-filmed documentary style. Did watch bits of it. You just start to think, like, could we actually fit anything if we're trying to please everybody? There's elements in there that's really hard for us as installers, and it could be the case that we start stocking a particular brand's inverters. It doesn't have to be Tesla, and all of a sudden a news story breaks. They've used child labour, they've used forced labour, there's some chemicals in them that aren't right or whatever. This product still works, but it's not what it should be. And all of a sudden you can't do anything about that. You're left carrying that. It's not easy. It's really difficult.
It isn't. And we went into that a little bit on that really good episode with Sarah from Waxman, didn't we? Where she was on about kind of making sure that there's these they have these like declarations, but she was saying how hard that even if they have the declarations, how hard it is to actually prove that they're even worth the paper that they're written on. And it is a tricky one. Like that, the job that I came from, the survey that I came from to be here today, the guy was adamant he didn't want a Tesla. He has a Tesla car, and on the back of it, he's got that sticker that apparently is the most popular sticker on Amazon now. Something like, I bought this before Elon went mad, or something like that. He's got that on the back of his car. And it made me think about, like, because you're absolutely right, every company that's been established for a fairly decent amount of time, like, decades, has probably got some skeletons in the cupboard, like, the whole VW thing with, Germany and the Nazi party, all that, all that sort of stuff is in their history. Doesn't mean that they support what happened back then. It's obviously, it's 85 years since Dunkirk or something like that, as we film this now. And that's just lifetimes, or a lifetime ago. So it's one of them where there's all these skeletons in the closet, but I think that what makes the Tesla thing slightly different is that it's a personal brand that's kind of affected this multi-billion pound company, but it's this one individual. You know, you haven't got someone at VW that, you know, can be associated with its past. VW is just a brand in itself. Tesla is a brand in itself, but maybe just because it's young-ish when you look at the rest of the market, that it hasn't moved away from the owner's brand as well. And that's the same for me, you know, in a much smaller world, in a much smaller way, and probably similar to you, Mark, as well. It's kind of like you as an individual are the brand of Powersonic and me as Oval and us both as this podcast. It's kind of like if we do anything crazy, that's going to have an impact on our business. And so trying to develop the company's brand as opposed to your own personal brand, which is a horrible word, I think is a focus if you want to have that longevity. But it's difficult now to do that, really, when you're wanting to try and promote it yourself.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be the business owner. Sometimes it can be a member of staff. You see it where they post something on social media and they get reported into their bosses. I know of a couple of examples of that in the wholesale game, the electrical industry, where certain sales reps who've posted stuff online have been dragged over the coals by the bosses. So we all are kind of responsible to that. But when you're someone like Elon Musk, who's like richest man in the world, I think, isn't he? You can kind of do what you like, and
It was.
well, yeah, everyone has to suffer the consequences of that, like, or make their own views on it. But that doesn't help Sam Featherstone of Oval Renewables with stock of Tesla batteries in his warehouse that he can't now sell, or struggling to sell. It's really, really quite hard, and it doesn't just have to be that. It could be another manufacturer's kit where all of a sudden customers don't want that, and someone else is carrying the stock of it. And I think you've got to try and be mindful of this stuff as much as you can, and maybe carrying lots and lots of stock of high ticket value kit, as much as it's convenient because you can get a bit of a discount. It's probably why you bought them, get a bit of a deal on them. And you know you've got them to hand because they were quite hard to get, weren't they, over time as well. So it gives you a bit of an advantage when you're proposing systems. You know, we can get this done for you in 8 weeks, where everyone else is maybe saying it might be half a year before we get you one. You've got a bit of an edge there. But then when it goes the other way and you're stuck with that stock, do you have to start depreciating that? Is it suddenly worth a lot less than you paid for it? How does that then look in your business costs? And the same thing applies to solar panels, EV chargers. You know, there's an element of risk there in all of it. And for me, the wholesale network should carry that risk and keep lots of stock of everything, so we don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, there's obviously this sort of risk where something within that company makes it unpopular. You know, with Solar Edge, there's the whole Israeli thing. Like that's been a few comments on, because I'm a massive Solar Edge fanboy of it. I'm not a fanboy of what's happening over there, but it doesn't mean that product isn't still, in my view, the way that we should all be fitting solar PV in my own personal view. But it has tarnished its reputation, certainly from what I see, which is really sad because it's a really, really good product. They've now moved it all over to the US in terms of like pretty much everything that Solar Edge do now are over in the US. They've still got a headquarters over in Israel and what have you. But it's all these sort of things are completely outside of our control. And there's those sort of elements that kind of have this like wrecking ball in your business. You think, what am I going to do with all this kit? But then there's also a new product comes out, you know, like the SIG Energy stuff has just changed the game. And suddenly, if you'd stocked, you know, a different brand of product, and it doesn't compete with the SIG Energy, SIG and Store, I still haven't nailed down what exactly how to call it. They come in, and suddenly you've got 20 grand's worth of kit sat there, and you think, nobody wants this kit now. They want this other piece of equipment that we haven't installed yet. You know, like we had Aaron from Anchor, another great product that's come out. All this sort of stuff comes out, and you think it's knowing how much to hedge on those pieces of equipment. And like you mentioned, panels. You know, we've got about 4 or 5 pallets of 455 watt Perlac panels. Guarantee. Well, I thought it was going to be guaranteed that as soon as I bought those 5 pallets or whatever, a 465 would come out. And then suddenly people are like, oh, no, I don't want the 455s anymore. I want the 465. So there's always a risk to all of that, isn't there? And that's a really tricky one to balance. because for those of us that have been through the whole COVID experience where you couldn't buy anything, it's kind of like this anxiety that you're going to sell these jobs and the price is going to spike, or you're just not going to be able to get the kit.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. The way we approach it at the minute, when we enter to deposit stage with our customers, we secure the materials at that proposed cost because of all the variation that everyone else has told us about. We've not actually suffered it because it's been quite sort of consistent in our time in the industry, but we're not unwise to it. So that's how we approach it. But it's the same with like you say, with the Sarge Energy stuff, or SIG Energy as I call it. It's not, I think it is Sarge Energy, but that's a different story. I think like at the minute that's riding a wave. It's this new product on the market, relatively new. It's got features the stuff doesn't have, but it only takes an issue somewhere in customer service or perhaps something political happening with where these products are manufactured. I think they come from over in China. So stuff like that can happen, and all of a sudden that game changes again, and there's something else. There's always something else been innovated. They might slow down on their R&D, like we've seen with My Energy. Look at what they were at one stage and where they are right now. So it's not, you can't ever say, right, this is it. It's going to be Sarge Energy for 5 years now. Just going to stock that. It's going to be great. We don't know if they might change their form factor, the way the batteries might stack. If they come out with an optimizer that turns out to be junk, whatever, anything could happen, couldn't it? And it was interesting watching. I'd seen a clip of Geordie Brompton on a podcast that she'd been on, where she was saying she was sat down pitching My Energy to Terry from Tesco. She's just like, it's just amazing to see that, someone who you see as a successful businesswoman. And she's like, we asked for 1.2 million, and they were like, yeah. It's like you just see that, and then all of her thoughts around investment and tooling up and stuff, and the risk that would then bring into their business at that stage must have been so exciting, but also terrifying at the same time. And we get elements of that at a smaller scale in my business when we're looking at stocking mounting equipment, and we can talk about that because there's been a bit of a hoo-ha around,
we'll get onto that,
around bits and pieces with all of that, because legislatively things might change. It might be that the regs say that particular product's neutral earth blend is non-compliant and you can't install it. And it's not the case with the Tesla Powerwall 3, but it could be. Like the IET come out with a PAS, and all of a sudden the way they're doing the neutral earth bond doesn't satisfy the regs, can't fit it in this country. And you've got 6 out there, and for a different reason you can't install them. So there's just risk everywhere around you look at it.
There is, and we've had that with the neutral earth bond link. We had it where I won't say the brand, but we had it where the backup side of things used like the IT earthing system. Basically, it's like a transformed system, and the first one we did, we're like, we're getting some really weird results from this, and we raised it with them, and they were like, no, it doesn't use that system. It doesn't use neutral earth bond link. It just has this IT system, and then literally it says, do not use an IT system in the code of practice or the regs or something. And we're like, literally, you can't do this. And we had to literally go around the country. They paid for it, which was very kind, which was, well, they should have done really. But we went round all of our systems and changed every single inverter, because their new inverter, weirdly, had a neutral earth bond link in. So we had to go around, and all of that is it's obviously a massive hit to them as a company, because they've had to provide, everyone that noticed probably a new inverter. But yeah, I saw that clip with Geordie on as well, and I think they'd asked for 150,000. And then they got sent away to say, no, come back with a real kind of figure that you need. I don't even know, like, if someone said that to me in Oval, I mean, I suppose that you'd probably have a goal that you're working towards if you were looking for investment. But if someone said to me, like, what would Oval need to go to the next level? I don't know, like 50 quid? Like, I wouldn't know that figure to say that. So I thought that was quite interesting. I did see that clip as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that episode if it's not out already.
Yeah,
to go off and track it down.
No, it was good. But My Energy have had that, and Give Energy have had that real way where everyone was fitting Give Energy.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a natural thing for every single company to go through. Like I mentioned about SolarEdge, they entered the UK. When I was over in Munich, they were saying they entered the UK in 2010, and they've never left the UK. Like I used to fit loads of Sonnen battery. They were like, everyone was wanting Sonnen. It was like one of the first slick-looking batteries. I mean, it's massive now in comparison to like the SIG or Sarge Energy system. But we we managed to get on that wave really quickly through the company I was working for as an electrician, and then they've just literally gone effectively silently just pulled out of the UK. And it's just like, but technically they haven't, but you can't really buy one that's not G100 and all this sort of stuff. You think, what's happening? But I think every company goes through that that wave, and it's like, where do they plateau out? Do they plateau out just below where they were on the wave? I don't think it's really possible for them to plateau out at the top of the wave. I think every company has that bit of a dip because of potentially the legacy products they've got out there. They've got a service, and suddenly they can't put all that money into R&D and all of that. Sig Energy have got the kind of that freedom at the minute where they don't have to look after a load of old systems. They can just fire on what people want. But what happens when they have got tens of thousands of systems that they've got to try and make a new product that's kind of cross-compatible, and the app has maybe had a bit of a glitch and all this other sort of stuff. So there's no product that ever stays at the top of the market all the time. It's where it plateaus out for me, and it worries me about the Give Energy side, the My Energy side, and all of that Solar Edge side of kind of like, do they disappear, or do they plateau out and then have another peak? It's impossible to know.
Yeah, I mean, Give Energy had a huge problem over, I think it was after Christmas, where there was problems with their customer service line, and they were inundated with issues of systems not being installed properly, I think, fundamentally. Obviously then comes back to them as the manufacturer. It's when all these storms were rolling through and people's systems didn't switch over to backup. I think that's what led to it. And then there was a problem with the Sarge Energy response on their customer service with installers. While Intersolar was on, actually, the people saying they were ringing up and not getting any response. There was a few posts on LinkedIn, actually, as well. People like tagging them in stuff, quite frustrated as installers. And it turned out, I think, that everyone was so busy with Intersolar, they'd kind of cut back on who was available to deal with those things. And I ended up covering a few for them, I think, over on DMs with installers, trying to help them add EV charge points into systems and other silly things like that. But you're dead right. At the minute, while you're riding that curve of new stuff going in, you're not dealing with the reactive maintenance. And a company like Sarge Energy, who's quite new to the UK, they really need to be on top of that, because it's inevitable that it's going to be happening. There'll be inverter failures, battery failures, troubles commissioning stuff. Again, I'd seen a post on Facebook where installers had set the gateway up wrong. I don't know if you've looked at it yet, but there's a separate port for where the neutral earth bond relay forms when you're off-grid to the common earth bar. And you either need to put a separate electrode in there for it, or to link out to your earth bar so it actually forms a neutral earth bond relay. Anyway, the customer had been getting these high voltages and shutting their EV charger out, got the DNO out to have a look because it was high voltage. That's just what they did. And the DNO came and said, well, your voltage seems okay, but we've noticed that when we pulled the main fuse to do a few tests that we were getting some weird voltages on your side of the system. And again, same thing you found with your IT earthing arrangement. It would have been doing exactly the same because that link wasn't in place. So his customer then, again, kicking off online saying that this stuff doesn't have a neutral earth bond relay because that's what the DNO had told them, when really it was an installation error. So all these things can kind of build up and lead to brands shooting themselves in the foot. A lot of it is self-inflicted, isn't it? I think the My Energy one is not innovating fast enough, and also cutting off the installer's interest in their product by starting to compete against us.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, they've got the new charger coming out, and I've only really glanced at it. It seems like a step forward, but probably, if we're honest, 3 or 4 years too late.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly fair assessment. I mean, I went to My Energy to have a chat with them a while ago, and they had them all in the car park, and I walked past them all, never even noticed. Never even thought to look. But that should have been out years ago, and I think they know that. I think the difficult thing with all of this sort of stuff is once you've ridden that peak and your business has been just earning money out, you couldn't do enough to spend the money that you were earning, and then suddenly when that changes, and I'm only guessing here, I don't know this, but as soon as that changes, how you react to that, and you suddenly find you've got a massive team, because you could have all these marketing people, you could have all these, customer service people, you could have, these massive show setups and everything like that, to suddenly things getting a little bit tighter, and maybe not having put the right amount of money in and focus on the next product and the next product. And this might happen to Sig Energy. They might go, right, this is everyone wants this system, and then competitor comes, goes, yeah, we've got all of that in, but ours does this now. And I was chatting to a lot of people out at Intersolar manufacturers about sodium batteries because I'd seen that Midsummer are offering, I think the brand's called 11, which is the anatomic number on the periodic table of salt of sodium, and that was a really cool conversation that I had there. I think that was one of the ones that didn't come out on the audio, wasn't it? when I went to there, which was a shame. We'll have to try and get them on. But I was chatting to them, and they weren't really interested in any of that. And then I spoke to a member of a wholesale network, and he had specifically been sent to that show to look for a brand that was making sodium batteries. So then you kind of go. I literally said to him, I've been talking to all these big brands about if they're doing the R&D into a different chemistry, and none of them were interested. They were on about how cheap lithium is in relation to sodium and all of that. And I said, like, explain to them, us as installers, customers, and the wider public expect these big brands to be looking at all this sort of stuff. And whether or not they have and they've got it sorted, but they don't want to release it yet because, it's not, they're doing well as they are, that might be the case. But I think it's when these companies stop innovating, really, because product is everything, functionality is everything. People can be pretty fickle with who they back and who they move to fit. But that's driven by what customers want. And if you can't sell it, you can only be so loyal, can't you? That's the thing.
Yeah, a lot of it now from a customer's point of view is all about integration, I think, isn't it now, and the app side of stuff. And a lot of the hardware can do much the same things. So we're talking about inverters and stuff. I think the reason Sage Energy has blown up in the way they have is they've gone for this modular approach, and their app is very, very good. And they've integrated AI, and for lots of normal consumers who don't want to get bogged down. I mean, we have geeky customers who love it. They integrate it with home automation. They're always in their apps. They understand it. But there's so many people out there who just want to fit a system and tell it to get me the best return on investment, and I don't get involved in that. And having an app that looks nice and some AI built into it that does it, that's been, I think, what's really drove them forward. So it's not just about the product itself, and then it's kind of making things easy for installers. We all have the pains of commissioning these systems. I've got them with Give Energy, and the all-in-one, it was horrendous for a time. It's much better now. But that really put me off wanting to install that, because you're going to be stood there for 4 hours sometimes and end up on technical support with every system. It just puts you off, and you stack a SIG system up, turn it on, and it just commissions in 5 minutes. It's like, I can fit these all day long. It's like, it's living the dream. So you solve a problem, and suddenly you get that interest, and your installers are recommending your products to consumers, and other consumers are seeing it online and getting the vibe of the product, seeing all the cool things the app does, and bi-directional chargers and stuff. And like you say, with SolarEdge, they had the same with their optimizers, and the way all that blew up and things. It's only really recently it's moved to being more about having backup function, integration with heat pumps, and all this app side of things. It's the new way. Who knows what will come next? And the sodium battery ones is really interesting, because I think the chemistry still around a lot of this stored energy we're putting in and around people's homes and in electric vehicles is something that the general public aren't totally comfortable with. And if there's a safer, more stable chemistry that can do much the same thing and maybe doesn't cost as much in the end when it's mass produced, that could be the next big thing. And if you're not the brand innovating it, you'd get left behind again.
Exactly that. And I think the big reason I was trying to push a lot of this sodium thing is that it's in abundance. Just to see, like when I went to Solar Storage London, they just had jars of sea salt. I said, this is what our battery is made of. Obviously metal and everything, but the cathode or whatever it is made of sea salt. And so that means that all these countries or companies that have monopolies over lithium pools and that still be valuable, but it kind of opens up this abundance where actually we've got loads of this stuff about. We're literally an island, we're surrounded by it. So suddenly then it becomes these opportunities. You still got to be able to manufacture it and all of that, but it just means that when you start looking at like things like the PAS document and you think, right, well, this is about, potentially a house fire, finding that battery and, creating a worse situation in that house because there's a battery there with all this lithium inside it. Suddenly do people go, actually, you know what, we're not as bothered if you put this in a house now, if it's a sodium battery, because from what this 11 were telling me, there's basically no thermal runaway with it because it's not lithium. The way that it works is you don't get thermal runaway. And suddenly then the regs change again, and suddenly then it becomes more compatible with terraced housing and flats and all this other sort of stuff. So it moves it on to the next stage, and I feel like it was so important. And I was a little bit disappointed that these big brands, I mean, they might be close to really, you never know. They probably didn't want to tell me, but they all seemed quite surprised that I was asking it, and I was a bit disappointed by that reaction, really. But it's certainly brands that stop innovating do suffer the consequences for that. And I don't blame them. It's hard to continually innovate because you get bogged down with all the legacy stuff, like we mentioned, don't you? So, I mean, like SolarEdge's new battery that was being announced, I think, at Munich looks very similar to the SIG. Stackable with no battery cables and everything. So it all stacks on top of each other. The inverter's built on top, and all this sort of stuff. So you start to see that the market does eventually, anything that leads, the market does eventually catch up. A bit like mind you with the Zappi, where it has a solar diversion on the charger. That was everywhere. And then suddenly other brands start coming up. Hypervolt start doing it. And then this other brand comes out, starts doing it. Give Energy release their charger. And then suddenly it's more about ecosystem. And mind you, we're too slow for with the battery. And so it must be a massive headache because you're not talking small sums of money when you start to divert R&D, are you?
No, it looks and sounds easy to us as installers, saying, well, why don't you just do that? But they'd be dealing with a multitude of headaches all over the place, just trying to keep going week to week, I'm sure. And it's easy from afar to judge anyone else, isn't it? And I think the market ultimately will punish those who don't manage to do it and lift those up who do. And it's always been like that. I was gutted to not get to Munich. So before we go on to talk about the other angle on this discussion, how did you actually find that? How does it compare to your solar and storage?
It is the wildest place because firstly what struck me was the first two stands I went to, the guys were about half an hour from where I live.
All right.
So there was a company that was maybe a bit more than half an hour, but I think they were Manchester based, actually, thinking about it. It was a flat roof, a ground mounted system. And I was expecting German accents, and I was like, oh, you sound like you're not far from me. And then the other company, Gripple, which are in Sheffield, head office in Sheffield, but the guy was Canadian. And but it was solar and storage on steroids. And people told me that, and I was like, it can't really be. How much bigger can it actually be? We didn't get around most of it, I would say, because the scale of it is just unbelievable. One thing that I did notice about it was that there's a lot of systems there that aren't really compatible with us. So a lot of floating systems. So for like big lakes and things like that, which you'd never get that on like Windermere, would you? Like a massive, great big floating solar PV system. A lot of balcony systems for, like the Italian homes and all these sort of more kind of higher rise buildings and things, lots of things like that. Lots of panels that weren't MCS and what have you, which we know that can change, which is a bit of a jab for our next bit of the conversation. But it was very eye-opening to what else is out there. And what I found was that when you're in the UK, which is a relatively small place, when you go to like a European show, but more of a worldwide show like Intersolar, was that there's so much more product and innovation out there, even through EV charging and lots of bi-directional EV chargers. And you kind of think they're, this unicorn device. When you're in the UK, you got like the SIG stuff, which kind of has it there, but you're kind of like, wow, that's brand new. And I remember back the Indra stuff that's bi-directional, but it's like the side of a wardrobe. But then you go there and there's like these little bi-directional chargers. You think, my God, they actually exist, but we just don't have them in the UK. So it opened my eyes to what's out there. It's almost like having a gap year, going traveling. It was very good, but you need longer than the show is on for. So next time we're definitely going to kind of cross big parts out that we don't need. I don't need to see floating systems. I was more interested, but don't need to see floating systems. And I'm definitely going to, if I go next year, I'll definitely be kind of pinpointing who I want to see as a must. And and try and get invited to some of these after parties because they sound mental.
Yeah, it looked something else from some of the stuff I'd seen on your socials and other people's. And yeah, you probably in the UK we get things quite late on. I think. I mean, Sarge Energy is one. It's been out in America and Germany for a long time before it came to these shores, and it's probably the same with lots of other stuff that we don't get things first. So going out there into solar, you may have seen something that you think actually that could be really good, and it's coming into the UK in the next 6 months, and opportunity to get ahead of the curve because of that. So it makes sense to make those trips. But yeah, just again with the panels and the mounting, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because
this moves us on to this this whole MCS side of things, isn't it? Which is rife in terms of the Facebook chats and the WhatsApp chats and things that are going on. And
that kicked off while you were there, didn't it?
Yeah. I didn't know anything about it really because I'd been to Munich and then we literally got back and then we had a family holiday to Bulgaria. So I was in Bulgaria and there was all these chats going on about how MCS had stitched up the industry. I'm like, what's happening? And so I think the first thing to say is that we are going to be reaching out to MCS to see if they want to chat about this because there's always two sides to every story. But in this bit, we're going to be putting a few little jabs in because, on the face of it, it seems like it's been handled pretty badly from what we can see.
Yeah, there's been the rumbling thing going along around certain in-roof system, hasn't there, for a while, and the fire side of that and understanding all that. I think that's still not thoroughly cleared up. But this was more like your typical mounting systems, and again goes back to the sort of thing we were talking about carrying stock. You know, that's one of the things we do keep a good stock of is our rail and hooks because it's difficult to order on a project basis precisely sometimes because you don't know exactly where all these roof timbers might end up being, and we just carry stock of that stuff and take out and order back in on a weekly basis sort of thing. So you do keep that in there, and if you're tied to a particular mounting system, say Fasten Sol or Clenergy, and you're stocking that in your unit, and then all of a sudden the systems that you've proposed on at that price point and you've bought as stock into your warehouse, suddenly you can't use it. It's like because it's been removed from the MCS database. So for consumers out there who maybe don't know, there is an approved list of equipment that we can use to then be able to issue you with your MCS certificate, which you probably only way we want to get your seg payments. And if it ain't on there, we can't use it.
Yeah, and I think that's at the heart of it. You know, we've done other podcasts that may or may not be out at this point whenever this one goes out, but about kind of juggling costs in a business and all of that. And you're absolutely right. You know, you do keep stock of certain things. We mentioned about me with my Tesla Powerwalls. I'm not going to keep thousands of them, but you can quite easily have hundreds of roof hooks. And if you're a bigger company than both of us, and you may be knocking out, you know, there's companies out there that are knocking out 10 installs a week around the country. You say domestics, then obviously commercial is less tied into the whole MCS side of things. But domestically, if you're knocking out 10 installs a week, pretty much every week of the working year, then you've got thousands of this sort of stuff and you've put tens of thousands of pounds into it. And on the face of it, without a thorough kind of conversation around it, and I really do want to have that conversation with MCS about it, it seems like at the drop of a hat, it's been issued that all this stuff you now can't use. But they have come out with a grace period, haven't they?
Yeah, I think it traces back to a communications issue because my understanding is it was discussed in the MCS kind of standards development team. It was then put out in a draft public comment because, as we've talked about before, lots of installers aren't engaged in those things. We just don't see it. If this kind of, I'd call this substantial changes coming, they should be shouting about it from the rooftops. Never mind the changes to the scheme that's coming. Let installers know, get it all over the socials. I think it's somewhere this stuff's tested that's altered. I don't know. But yeah, there's this grace period now of 6 months. But from what I understand, that only counts if you've ordered it already and you've got it, you can sort of use it. It not can be the case that you've proposed systems and then you need to order it in to fulfill them. You can't do that.
Yeah, see, this is the thing, isn't it? Because I was having a chat with a lot of other installers on the ESK group chat, the renewables one that is run by the Electricians podcast and what have you. And there was a bit of ambiguity as to whether or not that meant that the wholesaler had bought it and therefore they couldn't order any more stock in. I think that was probably people that were kind of like, I need to use this sort of kit, or if that meant you as an individual had bought it. Now, I tend to lean more on that it's you as an individual has bought it, more so than the wholesaler. But like, how do you prove as to when you bought it? You know, that this is that. So I personally think for 6 months, people will be buying that product and registering it, and there's not really any way that that can be back traced. I mean, I can't see MCS coming out and saying, right, give me the receipt for that and let me see when you bought it, because how do you know that you haven't used some stock for that? It's not all serial numbered. So yeah, I feel like it was potentially that part of it was maybe a needless complication of just saying, right, there's a 6 month grace period whilst people get sorted with this, but it's not going to be MCS by the end of this time. So if you use it after the 6 months, because there's only so much product that they can use for 6 months, they could buy containers worth, but if you don't use all that by the 6 month cut off, you're not going to be able to register it as a system anyway. So people would only bulk buy it for what they think they could use within 6 months. But for me, I think the reason for this needs to be really clarified and punched home, because if it's the way that this stuff has been tested, there's major flaws in it, then MCS have completely done their job, and take my hat off to them. Whether or not that could have been communicated better, there'd be an argument there. But in the actual, if the actual reason for them removing it is that it's not safe to use because the testing has been fudged, like there's that whole VW thing where they fudged all their emissions tests and all that. If there's something like that out there that is a major reason as to why that has been removed from the database, then MCS have done what they should be doing, maintaining standards and a product standard in this case, and are looking out for end users, and they deserve credit for that. But we don't know the answer to that yet, or I certainly haven't seen the answer to it. So I'd be really interested to chat to them and see if we can clear that up, because I think that's going to be the crux of if they're forgiven for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If new evidence has come to light that a particular manufacturer has not been testing things in the right way, and something along those lines, then yeah, they've got to do that. It's new information. You react to it, and I think installers would understand that. If it turns out that there's been a change in what that testing standard is, so that's adjusted, and what was being used complied with the old testing standard, but what the new testing standard is, it no longer complies with. My kind of issue with that is all that backdated systems that were tested at a different standard and have been installed, are they unsafe? Do we need to be doing retrospective work on that? And if we do, who's paying for it? Sort of thing. It's like, have they suddenly become dangerous? If you can't fit them now, you shouldn't have really been fitting them now. So there's a bit of clearing up there to do. If the test procedure hasn't changed, the results have been fudged, MCS should call those brands out and do exactly what they should done and communicate better with installers. If something else has changed, you need to tell us what it is so we can understand it. Yeah. At the minute, we just don't know. And it's not just MCS, all the industry bodies do it. It was in the draft for public comment. We spoke about it on a webinar or a committee that just doesn't reach installers as much as you think it might should. And maybe there is some due diligence on an installer's part as well at times. But with the social media things out there and all the ways they've got of reaching people, it wouldn't be that difficult for them to do around something like this.
Yeah, and certainly have a massive campaign of getting that out there before the deadline. Announce it like they have done with the grace period and go, right, this is why this has happened. Because, and fully explain that and say, right, you've got 6 months to use it. If it is a really bad issue that means that it needs to cease straight away, then fair enough. But obviously they've given it this 6 month grace period, so it must not be that serious. Then they're doing the job, and we would all probably really forgive them for that. But I think no matter what's the real reason behind it, and hopefully we can bring everyone the reason when and if we can get that kind of answered. If hopefully, no matter what's happened, the communication issue is an issue, no matter how serious the reason that they've removed it is. the way that it's been communicated is an issue, because none of us, or a lot of us, still maybe don't even know that this has happened until you go onto the database. Some of these installers that aren't as tuned in on social media and these sort of community chats might go one day and go, right, I'll do all my MCS certificates tonight, and go on and go, why can't I register this? So there's a communication issue there, definitely. So yeah, let's fingers crossed that we can get them on to have a chat about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there can't be anything that serious on it, because they wouldn't let people install it for 6 months. If there was, it must be something, I don't know, there must be something weird in there. And for consumers wondering why it's even a thing and just swap to a different mounting system, the cost difference is quite substantial between a couple of the brands that have been removed. They were among, I don't say the budget, but they were lower cost, weren't they? I mean, it's not affecting us. We don't install it. I was led largely on our mounting system of choice by the likes of you and Dan and Magic, and you're all in the Volt game, and that's kind of what led us towards that product as well. And luckily enough, they're still on the register and safe to be used. But if you're one of these contractors who's stocked up, and if I had done this particular brand's equipment, I wouldn't want to install it now. I just wouldn't. I'd find something else and suffer those costs, knowing that it wouldn't feel like the right thing to do, whatever the financial side of that is. But other people might see that differently. And again, the stock you're holding, it could be that you're holding, like you said, they could put in 10 systems a week and they might have 20 grand's worth of mounting kit in a warehouse somewhere, and all of a sudden it's dead money.
We only fit on the pitch roof systems, we only fit the Van der Waals kit, but it could quite easily have been Van der Waals that was affected by this, depending on what the reason is.
Yeah.
And if I'd have if I'd have come back, seen that in Bulgaria and gone, now Van der Waals can't, are non-compliant, I would have been unbelievably raging, because not only would you not be able to fit that kit, who's going to want to buy it off me? You'd be having to put it on Facebook to some DIYers. So yeah, it'll be a really interesting one to find out the real reason behind that, and hopefully MCS learn a lesson about communication. That's what this podcast is about. We're not necessarily saying you have to come on here to announce anything that changes in the industry. Our heads aren't that big, but doing things like this podcast, like doing a webinar, like getting on social media, like sending emails out, like getting suppliers that supply the kit to go, you might want to let your installer base know that this product is nearing an MCS cliff, or what have you. All these sorts of things, for me, if they've tried to do that, I've not seen any of it.
No, and Ian is a great guy. I've loved having him on
Really
the podcast a couple of times to talk to. He's a proper nice bloke. He's a good laugh off camera, and he talks honestly when he's on it. He's one of the guests who isn't afraid of being asked any question, and hopefully he'll come and have another chat with us about that and some other things, and we can get an answer to it. We're not saying we're the central point of all information around it, but we do have a lot of installers following along with this show and our wider social media, and that all just kind of spirals and reaches out into places that maybe MCS can't get through their own channels.
Yeah.
And there's always a space here for people to come on and have those conversations, because we're both geeky for it and really like it. But also it serves as a better like siren out to industry, if you like. If there is a problem, we can use that to get messages out there, and that's freely available to anyone who wants to come and talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to have that in the new world of, back in the day, there probably would have been a newspaper article about it or something, but now it's all this sort of digital format and longer form conversation, and that's what we love to do, and that's what this podcast is about, so that it can be explained fully. And I think if a problem is found and an explanation is explained properly, people will be on board with it, and it probably adds even more pressure to those brands to get that sorted out, or that testing company to sort it out, because people are on board with the governing body that has decided that it's no longer to be sold and fitted. I think you got to pull the people along with you, haven't you? And
you do.
It feels a little bit tricky.
Yeah, you do. And like MCS, they'll be the ones who've maybe been thrown under the bus around all of this, because they're like the headline to it. They're the ones who manage the register, but it could be the testing body, whoever that might be, that they've done something. The manufacturers, we don't know. They're just the ones taking the flak at the minute, and the ones who should be explaining themselves.
They're the ones with the little jabs to the ribs that we're giving them at the minute. Yeah, I think the last thing that I just wanted to say was it's a bit of a step to the side from the MCS side of things. I think we'll let them off for now until they maybe come on and explain what's happening, or we get something that we can read out. But the last thing around this whole kind of flexibility and kind of ever changing world is obviously in the UK there's this big thing with reform and what have you seem to be getting really popular, and whether that translates when all that when the actual elections come out. But they've in some of their policies of taxing solar is quite interesting, because they fundamentally don't agree that it's necessarily the right way for people to be spending money, and that's kind of on the horizon for us a little bit. We've kind of got like 3 years, 4 years, or what have you of that not coming in, and if they do get at least, if they are successful in being in government, whether or not that does come in and that can really affect a business. At Intersolar, I was chatting to some people from the Netherlands, and they were saying, I'm sure it was the Netherlands, they were saying that it's really hard with solar in there because they're not allowed to export back to the grid. I might have got that country wrong. I just cannot think from off the top of my head exactly which country it was, but they're basically got a zero export policy where they can only self-consume. So these things can really affect what happens.
Yeah, I think as it gets adopted more, it's inevitable that those kind of things are going to start to happen either through taxation or just no export, because there's nowhere for the power to be used, or there's no revenue being generated on burning fossil fuels anymore, and they need to fill their tax coffers back up. So you can see it where that'll end up for us in the UK. Who knows? And I just seen again today, Mr. Trump telling Keir Starmer that he needs to drill, baby, drill, and there's 100 years worth of oil apparently in the North Sea now because Donald says so. So rather than salt for sodium batteries, they might be driving oil wells out again and burning oil for more years to come. You can't forward predict that. It's way too volatile, isn't it? There's no stable government at the best of times, and definitely not that at the minute.
No, it's very tricky, and I think there's only so much that you can really do as a business owner to kind of prepare yourself for something like that. If that happens and the tax comes in, it might come in without being a reform government. It might be a conservative government that comes in that brings that sort of stuff in. Keir and Rachel might be really desperate for some cash and so need to bring in some solar tax, and you just don't know. We obviously saw like the power cuts over in Italy. I think it was Italy or Spain.
Portugal, wasn't it?
Portugal, I didn't get it right. Yeah. But it was those sort of issues there as more of this generation comes online, and it's a really interesting part of our industry that I think with the right level of thought we can get right, but we're probably going to suffer these little hiccups because it's so new and it's kind of a different way that our distribution system works and our generation system works, that we need to really hopefully let other countries make mistakes and us learn from them before it happens to us.
Absolutely. I think, like you said ages ago on the podcast now, it's like a transition phase we're in, isn't it? And there will be all those things catching us out and not going to plan. But I think ultimately, if you can get yourself to a point where you're self-sustaining yourself as much as possible in terms of your energy needs, that's a good place to be as just a normal homeowner. It's how I look at it at the minute. If taxes come around solar or I can't export anymore, then whatever, I'll deal with that. But being able to know that I can largely power my home through the months of March to the end of October at my own means, I think that's quite cool, and less dependence on the grid and a bit more control over where I am and aren't spending money. And I don't think that's a bad play overall.
No, definitely not. And it gives you that flexibility to, no matter what. The way I explain it to a lot of customers is that even if you can't cover all of your load, you may be 10% reliant on the grid over the course of a year. That means if the price spikes, you're only going to get hit on that little 10% of your dependency on the grid. So you're buying your power by buying your system. You're buying your power for 90% of the year in that one system for the years to come, as long as that system still works. So it's about keeping you have to be grid connected in most cases to earn money from export and support the grid. And I think there'll be a lot more schemes like that, to be honest, where you can earn money from actually having this system as sort of like a little investment. But who knows? We're all just guessing.
Yeah, I mean, energy prices came down again today, didn't they? And
Yeah.
your only real way of securing your energy costs prior to having solar panels and battery storage was to fix in on deals. Now you can kind of take a longer term view that, okay, I can maybe ride the variable train a little bit because, like you've said, I'm only really buying in 10, 20% of my energy needs through the year anyway. So if you're a bit worried about a particular spike, you don't maybe have to panic and lock in due to it. You can wait and then get the savings when they come. Because I'm sure energy costs, as we get back towards winter again, they'll go back up. We're just blessed at the minute that it's been quite windy, it's been quite sunny, and we were plentiful renewables on the grid, so prices have fallen away. But once we get back to the darker months, that game will change again, won't it?
It does, and these systems, in my view, no matter what the policies come out, the fundamental technology it's just really cool and seems like a leap in the right direction. Even when you remove the whole, renewable side of things, just for air quality and all this other sort of stuff. I know there's a lot of conversation about where these things are made. The air quality won't be any good, and the land and all of that. And I get that, and that's why I mentioned about the sodium side of things, whether that can be cleaned up because of the lithium runoff and all that for these things being made. But equally, when the first car was made, probably everyone that sold horses and carts were thinking, well, that's an horrible thing. It doesn't go anywhere near as fast as a horse does and all this sort of stuff. But it develops over time, and you have to have that messy start to learn what not to do as much as to learn what to do. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to follow it.
It will. It will. I think we've given that a good exploration again, mate. And I've finished with everything I've got to say on those ones.
That's me all conversation
you
out.
Can take us out on this one.
No, well, thanks very much for joining us for another episode of the Renewables Podcast. If you've got any questions about this episode or anything else, really, we've got a decent back catalogue now of episodes. So if this is your first episode that you're listening, you thought, oh, this sounds all right, then we have a look on our YouTube, our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere, and have a look at what we've spoken about. And we'd love you to be a part of the crew, part of the Renewables Podcast crew. So thanks very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
We do need to remember to talk about our sponsors and the Installer Show. We say this pre every recording. We need to remember to say this, and we get into the chat and forget. So we're doing it early on here. And just to say, our supporters at Proteus are absolute legends, and they have got some cool new products. There's the Type D RCBOs now in their range. They've had the Bs and Cs for quite a while. The Ds just launched. Obviously, they're more rare that you're going to be using those, but if you're installing motor circuits or you've got some big banks of lighting circuits maybe where you need that coverage for your inrush currents, they are useful to have in the range. And Sam's got a B version there, but the same sort of size and scope.
They are. And the B types, I was just looking at the size of that. That's basically like the size of an MCB now. And bidirectional Type A, they are really, really good, and I'm not just saying that because we're sponsored by them. They're fantastic.
Now you've adopted installing them into your business, and we've been fitting them for a good old while. And as you say, it's just the range. There's the Type B RCBOs that we've mentioned on other versions of the podcast, but they do also have the 4-pole 3-module RCBOs, which are really useful if you're fitting EV chargers on 3-phase systems. Before, you'd usually have to have a separate enclosure for your RCD or a bespoke board that Proteus used to do with a little top bit that you could put your RCDs in. Now you don't need to do any of that. It just goes into the spine board, really simple and straightforward. They're not that expensive either in the grand schemes of 3-phase RCD protection. They've just got a massive range of gear. Go and check them out if you've not seen it already. They're in cities everywhere.
It's such a good point, because cities are everywhere, which means if you're ever short of anything, you can guarantee that you'll either be able to get it that day or you can order online and get it the following day. It's unbelievable.
It is. I was short of some brass screws for conduit boxes. I'd left them in a tray in a loft somewhere probably, and I was like, what am I going to do? Straight on the internet to cities down there, and they had thousands in stock, and there's problem solved in it. So I think that's the default approach for lots of us out there when you're missing something.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're working nationwide.
Yeah.
It's very tricky.
And then we've got the installer show as well, and we're part of that this year. That's something that we're really excited about, but they are helping us out with the space there, and we do want to talk about the actual event, and hopefully some of you guys and girls will go and sign up. There'll be a link in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this to go off, because you have to register if you want to attend. It is free because it's at the NEC. You need a pass. It's a restricted secure area. If you want to get in the show, you're going to need one. So make sure you go off and do that. We'll be there on our stand. We've got a few exciting little things that we're plotting and planning, but more widely, there is so many brands and industry bodies there, from plumbing, electrical, even down to brickies and gardening. It is the installer show for all of construction.
Yeah, and I think, are we near Milwaukee or something like that as well?
We are. Hopefully get some freebies. We'll get there early in the morning and we'll raid their stall.
See, I'm a DeWalt. I'm a DeWalt man, but I'm not going to hold that against them. But no, there's such a wide range of stuff there that it'll be so interesting. Hopefully, we have a bit of time to look around ourselves as well. But I'm really excited to have the good conversation with people that watch this, introduce new people to what we do here at the Renewables Podcast, and probably pick up some more ideas for some more episodes as well, because there's so much to talk about in renewables, and I love having this conversation.
That tends to be what happens, doesn't it? We spill into other areas of chat from speaking with people at these shows. We're going to have some of our own merch there as well when we're running our little sessions. We still yet to fully define what they are going to be. But if you want a T-shirt like Sam's modelling over there, we'll be passing a few of those out, along with mugs and books and pens and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah, it'd be good.